One thing I do want to announce with our interfaith collaborative work that we've been doing, very intentional since last summer, not that we haven't for years, but really, how are we doing this together? But one of the actions that our interfaith community discerned was more engagement with our young people. And so the innovation and ideas that have come out of that, we're now calling YouthNet SA, and we're collecting as many connections as we can with various youth groups across the city, both faith, university, college, the youth commission, wherever we can find kind of a collective. And we're literally using the power and process of invitation by discerning upcoming events. Our first round was during the MLK season, invited young people to the youth summit, the interfaith worship, the march itself, to the youth panel on neighboring. And so it's really about finding major events that they can kind of come together and learn about community, about each other, about civic engagement. So some of those things that are coming up that they're being invited to this weekend is Teens Day SA. And that's been planned by young people for young people. So that's our invitation for this month into that YouthNet. Next month in April, there's going to be the International Golden Rule Day. Details to come on that. In May, there's a service day that's being planned at the food bank where young people from across the city can come together and serve together. And so it kind of goes like that. It rolls into that. We're getting close to 100 of those connections to put into that YouthNet, but literally there could be thousands of those connections. So if any of you are connected in even kind of remotely, but connected to some form of youth group, a collective batch of young people who regularly come together, it could be for theater. It wouldn't just necessarily have to be a youth group at a congregation, but all of those should be on it. But if any of those come to mind, if you would please connect kind of the lead of that group with me, then we can put them into the YouthNet and keep expanding that kind of relational interaction and weaving that together, but to really have our young people lead us forward and speak us forward. I, to out of my feet, I believe that having our youth lead us is an imperative, and it will change who we are as a people of San Antonio if they are leading our mission. So that's kind of a report, but also a request for those connections. So it's 8:04, and since nobody kind of raised their hand to other announcements, I want to go ahead and start. Mayor Nirenberg is with us this morning, and I want to hear as much as we can. I want to start with something that happened last night. I got a text about 6 p.m. from a colleague, and there was an undocumented family in San Antonio. And the person, one of the parents, lost their job and will lose their housing by the end of this week. And they have 4 children, and the youngest is 11 months. So my colleague was like, where can they go? And they had already checked at all the usual sheltering places. And my colleague was wondering if there was a congregation that would help so that they would not be houseless by this weekend. And that's kind of the context we're living in right now. And the Mennonites, as they have much in the past, they stepped up. And so that family of 6 will be sheltered this weekend and not without house. We know that they already travel with their home and their family, and San Antonio is their home, but we did find shelter. So I mentioned to the mayor that this group of participants at the intersection were very interested in hearing more about immigration. I don't have a specific question for you, Mayor. Um, I mean, you're the mayor, so tell us about all that you know and what we really need to hear. And I encourage you to invite us into what we need to be doing.
Yeah, well, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Ann, for the invitation. It's an honor to be with you all, and I guess your story and kind of illustrates the tenuous reality that we find ourselves in now after January 20th. I'll just kind of describe things as the way I see them, and kind of how we're approaching moving forward. And it's actually not just related to immigration; it's really all of the different changes that are being discussed and being put out largely through executive orders by President Trump. Um, so just first on a level set, I think a lot of us believe that regardless of all of the actions that are taking place, and of course a lot of the rhetoric, there are certain values that we as people and we as a community should live up to, just basic human values, um, a recognition that people in our community, regardless of anything, deserve basic dignity. And I think for me, that's sort of the bedrock of all of these different issues, because the new reality is, if anything, uncertain and confusing. So in a situation where there's a lot of confusion and a lot of uncertainty, and we don't know what's real, what's not, what's legal, what's not, uh, we can always fall back into our values, and you will always have a city, an organization, a mayor, neighbors who will back you up with when you are acting with those basic values of and treating people with dignity. And so, as it relates to the family last night, you answered the question before I did, Anne, which is that there is a whole network of people and faith communities that are willing to help people that are in need in our community. And if there's ever a situation where someone has a question like that, um, you're feel free to reach out to me. Feel free to reach out to Ann, to Bill Neely. Our whole sacred network was built for this very purpose, to have a human safety net for people. So how are we handling things tactically as it relates to the Trump administration executive orders? First of all, it's cold comfort, but what I will tell you is that what we're seeing, and this relates specifically to immigration and immigration enforcement, is that the actions don't really match the rhetoric at this point. What we're seeing in terms of immigration enforcement, and I've had direct conversations with ICE, is largely what we've seen before under previous administrations, whether they're Democrats or Republicans. Essentially, um, aggressive deportation of people who are already on their lists. And the difference being today, it's higher profile. There's a lot of showmanship, and there are, no pun intended, trumping things up to cause fear, specifically within immigrant communities and communities like ours, people who want to help. They don't want us. They want us to be scared of helping people. And so it's important to understand those facts, that, in terms of what's actually happening on the ground and what's happening on TV, there's some showbiz element to all of this, and the numbers bear that out in terms of the actual deportations and activities related. That being said, one of the things that we already know is happening is that people who are in vicinity, who are don't have paperwork, don't have documentation, who are in the vicinity when one of these activities occurs, are getting swept up in the process.
Mm.
And it's fairly indiscriminate from the anecdotes I understand. And that relates to women, children, and people who really have no cause for concern in our community other than the fact that they might not have the proper documentation. As it relates to how we're handling things, so and I think we talked about this long ago. You know, the real unfortunate situation is a lot of these issues that get people concerned about the immigration process, including the fact that people have to wait years and years for their due process. A lot of these things are very easily solved by improvements in legislation. In fact, there was quite a bit of legislation proposed that Trump single-handedly defeated by calling his friends in Congress. In the aftermath of the bipartisan bill on border security a year and a half ago, President Biden issued several executive orders, some of which really tightening up the avenues for the asylum process, not ending them, but tightening them up and making a process that frankly needs to be in modern law. But through those executive orders, we saw a significant decrease in border apprehensions between checkpoints, meaning that people were going through legal channels. They were going through checkpoints and they were seeking asylum at checkpoints. And the numbers were down probably by 90%. So we've been watching the activity related to our Migrant Resource Center really plummet since last summer. And we've been monitoring that because, you know, essentially we're operating a pretty big facility with Catholic Charities. And, you know, it was a central processing point because of the volume that of people that were coming through. That dropped, and so we were planning to shutter the facility. We've done that now. That being said, the way we handle arrivals has not changed in this community. It's now not just in a central location anymore. It's back to a more decentralized approach that we've done before through different nonprofits, NGOs, and assisted by the city, facilitated by the city. We're going to continue to do that. And, you know, to the extent that we need to step up and support organizations that have been impacted by federal funding freezes, which themselves, it's not clear whether or not they're legal. To the extent they're being impacted, we're going to have some real hard conversations with City Council, and I hope you all are there. You know, when it happens, that we're going to have to help up. The city of San Antonio is going to have to decide as a community, all of us together, whether or not we want to have a safety net for people. And that again goes back to the first part of our conversation about what are our values here at the city. Our safety net operates independently of people's nationality, immigration status, or anything else. So if someone is in need, we have a social net, a safety net for them, whether it's housing, food, shelter, whatever. And that's going to continue so long as I have anything to do with it. It's going to require us to be creative with resources, though, if these funding freezes continue. I'll stop in just a second to, you know, have a conversation with you all and ask. I'm sure you have questions. Just to say that one of the problems that we're seeing amidst all of the uncertainty is what is being referred to as anticipatory obedience, conciliation to Trump's rhetoric and executive orders, even though they don't, in some cases, have the weight of law and they are on their face unconstitutional. A lot of this stuff is being played out in the courts and will continue that way for probably years. And what we don't want to have happen is for us to see organizations, people back away from their responsibilities, essentially their human obligations, because they think they might be in trouble. That is a bright line for us. We will engage in litigation if necessary to ensure that we are continuing to follow the law, and that we are able to, again, stand on our values, which are in part based in the U.S. Constitution of providing people due process rights and being able to treat people with some basic dignity. So that's very, very high level summary. I hope it's helpful. I'm here to answer any questions, but I do want to thank you all. We've been trying to get out as much as possible in different small locations to make sure that people know their rights, to make sure that organizations know they have rights and obligations and support. The Archbishop hosted a panel the other day specifically for people engaged in immigration affairs. So we're going to continue to do that. What you're not going to see, though, is a lot of political chest thumping. As much as, I would love to host a press conference every single day and talk about each and every single thing that is wrong with what's going on. I am taking the perspective that what I want to do is put myself in the shoes of those we are trying to support and what will be the best for them. And frankly, the way this administration is working is that anyone who dares speak up will immediately have a target on their back. And so I don't want to place that target on the backs of the people we're trying to help. So I am picking the places where I can push back, and we are picking up places where we can push back. Some of that is strictly through the courts. We will continue to be vocal about our values, but we're not going to arbitrarily start putting back targets on our immigrant communities to score political points, which I hope people can understand. So I guess that's a high-level summary. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I do want to share with you and listening one thank you for such, transparency and honesty and continuing to lead. I don't know, and I want to share with you, and I want to remind everybody else in this strategic process that the interfaith community has been in, particularly since last summer, through a full community, engagement process, discerned that the one core value of the community, faith community working together is the ethic of reciprocity, the golden rule. So at the base, as you said, the bedrock of the work is to treat others the way we wish to be treated and to not treat others in ways we do not wish to be treated. And I heard that in all that you were saying, putting yourself in someone else's shoes and what that would mean and how that would impact you and impact the community as well. So I feel strongly about that, and that the community that's shown up today are all representatives of that collective work. I've had people come to me daily in totally different situations who say things and ask things like, what are we supposed to do? Whatever the rest of the question is, right? What are we supposed to do about such and such? What's going to happen to us, right? And my response continues to be much like what you're saying, is that we just keep doing what we're doing. And we've been practicing for a long time. We could do a whole lot in theology right now in terms of that target on people's backs, scapegoating. There's just a whole lot of history and philosophy and theology and community organizing and action behind everything that you're talking about. I see Kendra has her hand up, but we've got a couple questions that came first in chat. The first one is, Mayor, so if you help someone who has no papers, can you be charged with anything?
So that's a great question. And Trump has made it very clear, so has our state government, that they are going to try to enforce anti-harboring provisions. Those are largely, in my view, and in the view of attorneys I've talked to, largely empty threats intended to cause a lot of fear and prevent people from helping people in need. As I mentioned before, um, we have a social safety net in San Antonio. And I often said, especially after, our first SB4, in San Antonio, we don't ask people for their papers. We ask them how we can help. And so there's not a requirement in terms of immigration status to access social safety net resources. And you should feel comfortable with the fact that if someone asks you for help, you do not have to ask them for their documents. And I feel pretty strongly that that's the right thing to do, but I also know attorneys who feel strongly that's pretty safe legal ground.
We also have tons of historical heroes, right? Who have harbored people of faith during the Holocaust. You know, this is
Yeah.
part of, our faith traditions.
Well, and also, Ann, I'll just add, a lot of that is directed towards elected officials, um, uh, you know, uh, people in office and police chiefs and city managers, because they want to institutionalize this approach. And so I'll just tell you all frankly, I don't ever want to go to jail, but there are some things that I'd be willing to go to jail for. When I say that, we're not here to thump our chests, that is true. There are places where we can be vocal and, frankly, push back pretty aggressively. What I'm saying that we're not going to just go out there trying to score political points. I want to make sure that when we do that, we're not inadvertently placing the target on people who are trying to help our community and the people themselves that we're trying to help.
One quick question, then we're going to take some hands. When is the city council meeting that you're referring to? And what exactly is
So
being proposed?
I'm afraid I may have prompted that question. There's not a city council meeting where we're actually talking about funding yet, but I see where this train is moving in terms of, we already saw, the impact to Raices. They're not alone. There's a lot of organizations that are going to be losing some of their foundational support because of these executive orders and threats. And so we just have to be prepared that the city and frankly the county as well has a responsibility to resource a social safety net in our community. And I'll cite the city charter when council members are going to push back on that. But we can't function safely as a community without a social safety net, and that's going to require some choices related to resources if this continues to go in the direction that it is.
Thank you. Kendra, your hand is up.
Okay, I'm not going to come on screen because I still have rollers in my hair. I apologize. But thank you for taking the time to be with us today, sir. And I guess one of my biggest concerns is that immediately they reopened up the private prison market, right? And they're expanding migrant detention. And I don't know exactly where these detention facilities are located. But it's my real concern that they're going to round up as many migrants as they can, put them in these detention facilities, and then profit off their lives while saying, we're cleaning up the border, when they're really just human trafficking people by keeping them in detention, and then profiting off their lives. How real of a concern is that, in your opinion?
I'm concerned with that too, Kendra. Anybody who's studied any amount of history of the, modern era knows these are the steps that were taken in Europe in the early 1900s. You had our general land officer raise her hand basically and said she was willing to give up Texas land to open what amounts to internment camps for migrants. And so I'm concerned about that too. I guess what I would tell you in terms of what we're seeing right now in enforcement activities is not a whole lot different than what we've seen in the past. But, you know, I am not at all naive to think that they're not testing people's tolerance, and also continuing to move the needle in terms of anti-immigrant sentiment in this country that would allow us to do something like that, with you know, in full view of the public. I am concerned about that as well. So you know, that's where we all have a responsibility in what happens next. Pick our spots, try to help people, know when to actively push back, where to do that, and then ultimately we've got to get rid of some of these people that are carrying out this agenda when given the opportunity. Your next opportunity will be in 2026, frankly. There's a whole host of good, upstanding public servants that frankly are just choosing to capitulate in Congress to the agenda. And you know who's in charge here in Texas. So without getting political, we have a responsibility. It's going to be tough, though, in between now and then to you know, keep this from spiraling.
Quick question before going to Peter, Mayor. I noticed that your ride has come to a stop. How many more minutes do you have? Because we need to respect and honor that.
I could probably stay on for another five minutes or so.
5 minutes or so. So those with your hands up, keep that in mind because I will watch for the mayor. Peter.
Good morning, Mayor. Thank you for joining us. First, I want to thank you for starting one of your first actions, starting the faith-based initiative and hiring Ann Helmke. It's been wonderful collaborating. This great work.
I didn't start the faith-based initiative or hire Ann. My colleague did that in 2016, but I will take credit for the Charter for Compassion. But thank you very much, Peter.
Okay, well, you have empowered it, and I know you coming to our meetings and being a part of this whole movement, empowering the faith community. How do you feel about it going forward? I know Ann shared that the plan in place so that it continues as collaborative. I know it's on us because we have to stay engaged, but I think you've the initiative has laid a great foundation for it to continue. How do you feel about the plan that's been put in place to keep this work happening?
Thank you, Peter. It is foundational. I perhaps maybe was the first mayor that, you know, that institutionalized compassion movement was part of the bedrock of my agenda. And so I do appreciate your comments. I hope that it continues. It's going to largely depend on the priority placed on it by the next city council and mayor. I will do everything I can to emphasize that, and I have been doing so with the city management and, you know, and with my colleagues now. What I would encourage you to do, though, is speak out on what this initiative has meant to the community, faith-based community, and, you know, congregations can do a great job in making that case. The mayoral election, unfortunately, there's not a real clear thread line of what issues are important to people. It's a great opportunity to step up and make this an important issue, just by vocalizing the fact that in this Trump era, a lot of uncertainty and tumult, are we going to continue to be a compassionate community? I think that's a fair question to ask during mayoral campaigns, mayoral debates. And if the press hasn't, you know, firmly set the agenda on what issues are important, we can make that case. I've already made that case to them about water and the Edwards Aquifer and protecting that. We should do that about compassion as well.
Thank you. 8:30, you got 2 more minutes, Mario.
Oh, thank you, Ann, and thank you, Mayor, for convening all these folks and all the work that you've done. And Peter really just touched on it. I was going to lower my hand, but going back several years, and when your position was created, and then Mayor, when you got into office soon thereafter, and you were at City Hall, and that compassion work started. And it's just been so impactful, not only to the food bank and our clients, but all the support that everyone gives and rallies around the cause, whatever the cause is in San Antonio. It's just unreal. So the short of it is, the next 4 months, we have to support Mayor Nirenberg on a lot of these issues, and even beyond the 4 months, right? And so really just wanted to make that comment. The work that's been done through DHS and through you and the mayor. So
thanks, Mario. And I'll take Sister Martha Ann and Dr. Watts's questions, but so even if I stay a little bit longer, but for Mario, I appreciate that the work that San Antonio Food Bank has done based in compassion is remarkable. But I will say this to the group: it's so much more important that the compassion work is a part of our foundation and approach in public policy and what we do as a public when there's times like this, when it's uncertain, when we don't know what to do, when we don't know what's legal, what's not. Being grounded and having people recognize as this is the headwaters of our actions is so much more important right now. So I again, count on me to advocate for the work to continue, but collectively we should do that, particularly in this moment in time.
Martha Ann?
I thank you for speaking with courage, and I hold up this dove as an invitation to all of us to have courage. It was given to me by Rabbi Julie Denon, and we, the Incarnate Word Sisters, we've got space. So in our space for a couple of years, we were Jews, Muslims, Christians, dialoguing about building peace, building compassion. 9/11 came along, and the Jewish women initiated going to the grocery store with the Muslim women. And I want to invite us to that type of courage now. Where can we stand with the vulnerable in our city? Can we stand at HEB? Can we stand at Walmart? Can we stand together? And we may not be able to stop what's happening, but our very presence of standing there and like grandmothers stand and look at people calling for good action. So thank you for the courage in your words. Let's be people of courage and compassion.
Amen.
Thank you, Sister.
Beverly.
Mayor, I cannot thank you enough for your leadership, because it has such an inspiring and trickle-down effect. Several nonprofits have come together, and we're just literally helping each other. And we have said, we've come together and said, someone said, I've lost money, so I'm going to be losing staff. And others have said, listen, tell me who that is, and we'll hire them. And so I'm loving to see that kind of action come together, where someone says, we don't have this, and someone else says, we can help. And we are definitely better together, to coin a phrase from Reverend Helmke. But the one thing I wanted to be able to visit with you on, and I'm following up on a previous conversation, the Martin Luther King March is obviously one of the largest event that actually shows the importance of diversity and inclusion, et cetera. And I've now let everybody rest, and we're kind of over that. So I want to thank you, and I do want to be able to get on your calendar to visit with you about some things going forward, so that we can make sure we solidify that, all of that into something that you would be very much proud of. And I just want to thank you so much, sir. There's not enough words to be able to thank you for all you've done.
Thank you so much, Beverly. And I think Jackie's already trying to get us scheduled, by the way. So
Okay,
I look
good.
forward to
Thank
that. But no, the feeling is mutual. I'm finishing up a book and I hope you all get a chance to read it, but it does talk about how this community has shaped who I am. And the compassion work is certainly central to the way I was raised, but it's been nurtured by a community. And I'll always recognize the fact that we didn't become a compassionate community when we signed that charter. We simply recognized it and uplifted it, and I hope we will continue to do that. So I'm looking forward to that. And by the way, on folks who are impacted employment wise by some of the funding cuts. We also are trying to make sure that the Ready to Work program is activated for them, so that they'll have some assistance if they choose to into different careers. So we're ready to help as well.
Thank you, sir.
So Mayor, I see that Dwayne put up his hand. It's past your.
I'm not gonna say no to Dwayne.
I didn't think you would, but okay.
Good morning, all, and good morning, Mayor Nirenberg. I just caught Beverly's comments because my phone was blowing up on the side. But yeah, you know, it's always the model that we set in San Antonio, what we do with the ML King March. And I got a chance to just briefly say hello to the mayor yesterday as I was at the press conference for the Cesar Chavez March, which Ernest Martinez is a really good friend of mine, and Mario Obledo. But we continue to be a beacon of light with what we do. And of course, thank you, Mayor, for your leadership and taking the time to dash back into San Antonio to make sure that you are a part of physically marching with us. And I just thank everyone for their kind words and their words of encouragement under my leadership with the march. It really means a lot. I know it's important. And I will end with just reminding people that we talk about how we have the largest march in the country, but essentially what that also means is, with respect to the march, we do one thing better than anybody else in the entire world. And we need to make sure that during these challenging times that we can set ourselves out there as an example of what humanity really looks like. But thank you, as always, Mayor Nirenberg.
Yeah. Amen to that, Dwayne. Thank you so much, and did a great job. I wish you could have another 3 terms as the chair.
It would make a movement. We have a thing and we're going to do it quick. Everybody open up your mics and we say a great cheer and thank you all at one time.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank
Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor.
Later.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
We love you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I will stay on till 8:45 if some wish to remain and continue the conversation. Next week, we have an amazing person bringing our briefing, Dr. Mariana Chilton. Her recent book, The Painful Truth About Hunger in America, but that her hunger word in there is much broader, but absolutely includes feeding. She by far does the best explanation of trauma-informed care, and does that on a collective and systemic level. And then she flips it and says, instead of looking at the trauma, what if we focus on the healing and capacity? And so her efforts have been about building networks and collaborations, which is really ours and what we've been doing here. So I can't encourage you too much to come next week and invite others. There are other people doing what we're doing. They've been practicing like we've been practicing, and we can all move stronger together. And that's exactly what we need in our country today. That whole act locally, think globally, think nationally. We're on that. Martha Ann.
I put in the chat box, come to our workshop and our celebration this weekend, and I really mean it. We have wonderful people from Holy Redeemer Black Catholic Church, and they are dancing. We have a gigantic Vietnamese Catholic Church in San Antonio. People don't know it. 19 Vietnamese are coming, and they're dancing and they're singing. At our mission, my parish, Mission Concepcion, we've got like 20 Matachinas dancers. And my idea is these young people have never danced with each other. They have never sung with each other. So I am very deliberate. Come, because we need to know each other. We're all frightened right now. We need for our young people to dance and sing together. And I am a dancer. Come dance with me. We're going to end up dancing in a circle together. So thanks.
Thank you, Martha. And Billy, I wanted to ask you about sacred. So I didn't prompt this. But in terms of immigration, Billy, talk to us about what Sacred has in that particular area of community concerns.
So we have a pretty rich collection of resources for folks participating in the community. I'd actually invite Bill Neely, it looks like you're online here, to comment as well.
Oh.
We've got a fairly rich collection worth of materials there. Bill, you want to jump in?
Yeah, yeah. So, I'll remind you that Sacred doesn't do any services ourselves. So,
Right.
so what's in the directory reflects what the community is doing and has available. So a couple of things have happened there. One, obviously, a couple of services have closed. We've heard about the Migrant Resource Center. We just heard that from the mayor that's closing. There's also been some reporting about Raices and them having some pretty significant reduction in staff, which I think is going to lead to reduction in services. That being said, Sacred is continuing to list every service that's being offered in the community. Our standard is that the service is legal. So as long as it's legal to be kind to people, then you can put your service on Sacred. And so that is our approach to this. And so any services that are available to anybody in our community, including migrants and immigrants, will continue to be listed on Sacred.
So the beauty of Sacred is that it's, by zip code, so geographical proximity, but it's also kind of the full breadth of resources that anybody who's migrating, by anybody who's here, have access to. But there isn't a specific, I know we created a specific portal with the first Afghan influx. Is there any work being done in terms of Sacred and immigration in particular?
Yeah, so there is a project underway inside the Area Foundation around building collecting resources and information for migrants and refugees and immigrants. And so that I can't comment on that work specifically, but I know that project is there, and that and Sacred is going to support it however it comes forward. So I think the best thing to say is kind of keep an open mind. The people that are doing the good work are not going to stop doing the good work just because of bad press, right? I mean, they're going to continue. This is us caring about our neighbors, and we'll continue to do that. So Sacred will continue to support that. Right now, we don't have a major project coming forward, but I think there probably is one brewing in the community that is going to be heard about very soon.
And I noticed the question was in the chat box a couple times as well, but the whole question about the continuance of this kind of work, new administration locally. And I've said it before, so it's not really new news, but the strategy, the 18-month strategy that we've been working on is ownership within the community. So moving, for example, we've always done it. It's not like a major shift. It's just to be even more focused on it. But the interfaith and compassionate work, that the community itself owns it, that it's a part of our culture, so that it doesn't make any difference who's in office, that the community and the culture insist upon it, and that the community is driving it, right? So in that specific effort, Compassionate San Antonio Community Lead is the Peace Center of San Antonio that is located at Northwest Vista College, but within the Alamo College's district. That was developed because Alamo Colleges is ubiquitous. It's around the city. It's community focused. That's the driving force with Compassionate San Antonio, still in partnership with the city and everybody else and working in collaboratives, but that's where it lives. And in terms of the faith initiative, the people of faith taking initiative, we've been working on that in the strategy the entire 8 years that this initiative has been in process, but specifically really focused since the Interfaith Summit last summer on how do we organize many organizations of faith and religion. And that's what we've been doing, trying to build a system, not a structure, but a system that will drive itself and sustain itself. And I know probably most everybody on the screen has been a part of that process. But we've come up with values and purpose and persons of connections. We've reframed points of contact, but that within this organizing of organizations, we have persons that help make connections across the geography and city. We're multiplying the connectivity. If you do not get any regular information from this initiative, like the weekly calendaring that comes out on Tuesday mornings, or you're not getting a notification about Thursday mornings at the intersection, what we're doing right now, please, if you want to, email me your email list, and we'll put you there so you get that information. It's part of the system that the mayor and the initiative have been working on. So at the end of his term, it will make no difference who's in office. It will be helpful if who's in office continues in the same kind of strength. But the community will own it and move it. I hope that makes sense. I think in terms of who we are in this democracy, in that separation of church and state context, but it's always been for people of faith to be involved and to kind of keep government out of, telling the faith community how to move and breathe. So, and we also have a history in all of our traditions, right? Of stepping up and doing what's golden, do that ethic, knowing that there could be consequences. As the mayor says, he didn't want to go to jail, but there are things that he's willing to do so. So those are the last of my words. We're 3 minutes over. I am grateful for all of you. I encourage you for next week, if you have a team that you work with, I encourage you to get them in front of a monitor at the same time and come to the intersection and hear what she has to say. It could be one of the most beneficial times that we could have together. So get your teams together, grab a spouse or a partner. We've got to be thinking that way. This is not about us. It's about we and who we are. So we got to get as many people gathered together, moving together as possible. Enough. I'll see you next week at the intersection.